Okay. So now it's for something completely different. We're going on to Notorious B.I.G. and his debut album, Ready to Die. In the opening montage, you heard Juicy, and now you're going to hear Give Me the Loot.
Big up, it's a stick up, and I'm shooting niggas quick if you hiccup. Don't let me fill my clip up in your back and headpiece, the opposite of peace. Sending Mom Duke a Reef. You're talking to the robbery expert. Step into your wake with your blood on my shirt. Don't be a jerk and get smoked over being resistant. Cause when I lick shots, the shit is persistent.
All right, Maurer, the stats.
All right, so Ready to Die by Biggie Smalls. Comes in at number 59 in the 1990s on Best Ever Albums, number 12 in 1994, number 308 of all time. It is Notorious B.I.G.'s highest-rated album on Best Ever Albums. Made Rolling Stone's list tonight, coming in number 22 of all time there. And the Notorious B.I.G. ranked number 296 of overall artists on Best Ever Albums.
All right. The Notorious B.I.G. was born Christopher Wallace, May 21st, 1972 in Brooklyn, New York City. He was killed March 9th, 1997 at the age of 24. I'm going to get into the history of that probably when we talk about his second album. So this, I'm just trying to cover the basics. This is the first of his two albums. The genre is rap or gangster rap or East Coast rap. Influences, well, on the album he said that he has none and that he just got into it to make money.
He did say that, you're right.
I would say Rakim, Big Daddy Kane, Heavy D, Slick Rick, NWA, Gangstar might be some of the artists that he listened to growing up. Similar artists, Big Pun, Tupac, Jay-Z, Foxy Brown, more recently maybe like Big Sean or 50 Cent or Eminem. Mo Money, Mo Problems was number 1 for 2 weeks on the Hot 100. That's his highest rated single. And Life After Death, his second album, Born Again, a posthumous compilation album, and his greatest hits were all number 1 on the Billboard 200. Some fun facts about him: the nickname Biggie Smalls is first appeared on a demo tape that he made called Microphone Murderer, and is a reference to a character named Biggie Smalls played by the actor Calvin Lockhart in the 1975 film Let's Do It Again, directed by Sidney Poitier. It's also a reference to his size. He was 6'3" and between 300 and 380, so that's pretty, Biggie and Smalls. And March 92, the Source column Unsigned Hype featured him as a promising rapper, and he kind of used that to boost his profile. Sean Puffy Combs heard the demo tape from that, from that article, or that came from that article, or I wasn't clear if it was Microphone Murder they heard or a different demo from that column, but he was with Uptown Records at the time, and he signed him on July 14th, 1992, and Biggie Smalls appeared on the 1993 Heavy D and the Boys song, A Bunch of N-Words, which is the last track on one of their albums, basically like kind of a guest rap with like Busta Rhymes and some other people as well. Compilation type of song. A year after that, Uptown Records fired Combs, and then he launched Bad Boy Records a week later, and Notorious B.I.G. Went with him. Later in 93, Notorious B.I.G. appeared on the Mary J. Blige remix of Real Love and took the new name of Notorious B.I.G. when he found out someone was already using the name Biggie Smalls. So, but of course he became famous and he started using that as well. But I guess officially as like the rap name album, he was Notorious B.I.G. After, and this was funny, after the record came out, Biggie befriended Shaq and was introduced to him at a listening session for Gimme the Loot, which of course he name-checked Shaq in that song. And then Biggie appeared on the Shaq song You Can't Stop the Rain, which R-E-I-G-N, not R-A-I-N. And so I thought that was funny. I kind of left out all of the unsavory stuff about him. I mean, he did do jail time. He did some crimes. He was married to Faith Evans briefly, but also cheated on her. Those types of things I kind of left out. You can read all about that. But that's kind of how he got started. And he started rapping as a teenager, and this was the first album that he put out. So I think we've all probably heard this at one point or another, or at least songs on it. So let's start with John. What did you think about Ready to Die this time around?
I mean, it's a certified cold classic, isn't it?
Yep.
For my money, Notorious B.I.G. is the best storyteller in hip-hop. I think he has a way of painting a vivid picture. I love the way he constructs verses and how it's just effortless in terms of the sound of the word choices he makes and how they go together. And he just is very deliberate. Sorry about that. I was swallowing there. So if you're hearing anything, I apologize. I am not eating, as complained about on other podcasts. But that's the thing that always stands out to me about him. His storytelling, he's the king of flow. And part of the flow is just how he constructs his verses, how he tells stories, his references. I think he's not like a Lauryn Hill or the Fugees, right, where everything's, I play my enemy like a game of chess. Like it's a lot of like similes, right? Like and as. He does it a lot more skillfully. He weaves modern pop culture and old pop culture into his bars. And then you combine them with, the much maligned, rightfully, Puff Daddy right now. That's a whole different thing that we're going to cover that album later. So we'll have to make that like an R. Kelly type vibe when we get there. But what Puffy was good at is he was very blatant, but he had an ear for just the right singles, whether it be on this one, the song literally Juicy is from the funk track Juicy, that's on there. He pilfered the Isley Brothers and Diana Ross. I felt like he just spent a lot of time just going through those albums because he was just an excellent chooser of samples. Now, when they're not picking like home run samples for the singles, because there's 3 massive singles on this. There's Big Papa, which is an Isley Brothers single. There's Juicy, which is a Juicy single, and then One More Chance.
Right.
Another big sample right there. And then the other tracks are sort of more just a traditional DJ and have like roots to New York, which I like as well. He's in many ways an evolution from the hip hop storytellers of the late 80s and early 90s. Your Rakims, your Big Daddy Kanes, people like that. I always felt like Biggie and Nas were the evolution of those. There's a lot of also LL Cool J and like the braggadocious sex tales where you're like he's half joking but half serious. There's a lot of violence on this album, but he lived a lot of violence, and he famously was a drug dealer, right? He did get arrested. He did die young, so unfortunately where the line begins and where it ends can be skewed a little bit. I think probably even more so than it was for Tupac, who he's like intrinsically linked to. Like, he's not a guy that went to like a performing arts high school, right, and became a hip hop collective. He's a guy that like dropped out of high school. I mean, he tells you it on Juicy, right? It's his literal story. And he's a bright kid, but he dropped out of high school, public high school in, Brooklyn, and then sold drugs and still was selling drugs, if I remember correctly, while he was on Bad Boy at the beginning. And like Puffy had to tell him like, stop fucking doing this, dude. We can't have you like arrested. Right. So, but yeah, this album's a stone cold classic. It's a must if you're trying to go into hip hop, like to see if you're a younger listener and you're looking for the classics, this has got to be one of the first 5 to 10 discs you pick up. He only has 2 albums. He is not overrated. If anything, listening to this, he's still vibrant. I wish there was more hip hop that was like this in the modern context. Some of the gangsta rap tropes of it are a little bit of their time, but like you can't mistake his talent and his wordplay, and I mean he's at the tip top level of it, and you can hear that because other MCs defer to him, even like super talented MCs and wordsmiths go to it. And it's tempting to say, well, some of that's because he died early, but I think in the case of Notorious B.I.G., he's the exception that proves the rule, because he was headed to legendary status before that. And it's crazy to think that he only was alive for one of his 2 albums.
Right.
Like he was alive for one of his albums to drop, which is insane to think about. Wasn't he like 25? He didn't even make the 27
He
year.
he was 24, and his second album came out like
24.
I think a couple weeks after he died or something. Yeah.
I mean, Christ, you can be young and understand 24 is young, but like the further away you get from 24,
I know, it's crazy.
the greater an understanding you get of just how freaking young 24. I mean, your freaking cerebral cortex isn't even developed yet. So, but yeah, this is a stone cold classic, definite elite album on my chart. One of the best hip hop albums ever made. Easy thumbs up if you haven't listened to this one and you're at all cognitively interested in hip hop. Search it out. If you haven't listened to it in a while, put it back on again. It'll be such a pleasant re-listen as it always is for me.
All right, Matt, what did you think of this time around?
Yeah, so actually, I wouldn't say that I was very familiar with this record. The most exposure, actually, oddly enough, I had to this was in college. They weren't all just Dave Matthews fans. I had a friend that was very much into Big E and Wu-Tang in particular. I remember him listening to a lot of also Tribe Called Quest, and so I did listen to. I wouldn't say that I sat down and listened to those albums front to back or anything, but he certainly had them on, here and there, and I heard, and a lot of these songs were familiar in one way, shape, or form. Certainly the singles like Juicy and Big Papa were as well, but there were also ones that, man, I was like, shoot, I forgot about that song. So, yeah, a lot of what John said in terms of, I agree in terms of just his voice and his flow. It's really good, right?
Yeah.
Like he's just, he commands your attention when he is on the mic, and he's got a lot of cool wordplay. He's got very vivid kind of descriptions of things, and a lot of it's really dark too. So some of it's actually like, kind of quasi unsettling at times. Like, holy crap! Like the violence that he lived. He paints some pretty vivid pictures, throughout the album, particularly at the end where it's just like he shoots himself, and then you just the last sounds of the album are his dying heartbeat, just fading out. It's like, and the guy screaming,
thoughts.
"Big, we're up, big!" And you're like, damn, this is it's an intense record, right?
Well, that's Puffy, by the way,
in that regard.
That.
Oh, is that Puffy? Yeah. So there is that. There's also the beats and the samples, which are fantastic. I love how Things Done Changed is one of my favorite songs on this. It sounds like Curtis Mayfield, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't know, I don't see it on here, but it's something like that. It's almost like something from Superfly or whatever. It's kind of like that 70s, funk soul kind of vibe on and that song in particular. But even throughout the record, you're getting that as well. But I think that the production on this is fantastic. And while Biggie is a really good rapper, got really good voice and flow, what really brings me in is the production and the beats and the samples. That's kind of what I'm hearing first, or what's most appealing to me, I think. So I think it is a long record, man. It's like 70 minutes long, right? 17 tracks. So it's kind of very much like we've talked about this before in the 90s, where just lots of albums went almost as long as they could, right, on a CD. So it's not a double album, but probably would have been like in like the 60s or 70s. So, but for the most part, the songs are all standing up, from one song to the next. There's not really any song on here that I was like, I don't like that song, right? I thought that it's fairly consistent. I will say, and I was thinking about that this week, like, what I get most frustrated with these types of records, particularly like the gangster rap albums like this and Dre and Snoop and the Ice Cube and Ice-T that we've covered, I'm finding myself in very few situations nowadays where I can like listen to this the way that I want to, because I can't listen to this at home. Like I'm not blasting this on the stereo with my 6-year-old daughter around, right? I'm certainly not playing this at work, right? Like I can't do that.
Yeah.
I feel I feel like in my car with the windows rolled up, mind you, right? Because this is the time of year where I can, the weather's nice enough and I don't have the AC on. It's just like, let's have the wind. And when most of my albums, I'm doing that. I'm not doing that with Ready to Die, right? Like I am not going to just blast this from the car stereo, even as much as I would like to, So it's just, it's one of those things. It's like, yeah, it's got to be a time and place, probably headphones, although I don't listen to music I'm not listening to albums solely on the headphones very much these days either. So I'm kind of like, crap, I want to listen to this stuff more, but just in the context of my life right now, I don't really find myself doing that. The skits are kind of funny, but also kind of misogynistic at the same time, right? It's just very,
yes, they are. Not kind of.
it's very, yes. Okay. And it's kind of
graphic.
It's very graphic, like overly graphic,
Yes,
the
too
blowjob one is just like, all right. Like, and I just had to fast forward through that. I'm like, I can't. It's just I feel gross listening to this, and it's another one of those things.
Now, Ethne is kind of funny, and the fact that Spotify transcribes it is even funnier. Yes.
Oh, it's like was she like you like pickle juice or something like that? She's throwing out all these like.
I didn't find that super misogynistic, unlike all the other sketches. I found that one humorous.
That was pretty funny. Yeah. Well, she's just saying all that. Yeah, she's like insulting him using like ridiculous, yes, like it's all food related, right? Yeah, exactly. So it's another one of those things that doesn't age very well, right? And it's kind of like, and part of me is kind of going like, yes, this is it's a tremendous album, and it's obviously very influential, and he's very talented, but like. It's also kind of like at times makes you a little, at least for me, it was a little unsettling, and it's at times I don't know what to make of that really, because I think in a lot of the reviews and stuff like that I'll read about these things, it's talking how great the album is, and but there's definitely like it to me it does suffer from like either being hard to listen to at times because of some of those things, or just like. I don't know, re-listenability, right? Like, John, you talk about that being like one of your criteria. Is this an album that I can listen to over and over again? And the answer to that for this album for me is yes and no, right? Like, it's very re-listenable, but it's also very unre-listenable because of just like of some of those things that I was saying. So it's still a great album, and he's 24. I don't know, for some reason I had it in my head that he was 27 when he died, because that's kind of like. That's like the age, right? Cobain and Hendrix and Morrison and Joplin, right? But 24 is ridiculously young, and the fact that he also says
21 here, right?
Yeah, and he says in the interview, like there's a part, like a sketch in here where he's being interviewed, and they ask him how old he was when he started, and he said 18, and I'm like, really? That's it? Like he was only doing this for a couple of years, and he was just obviously like just a tremendously gifted rapper. So overall, yeah, this is great, but there's definitely some stains on this for me, some that make it a little bit more challenging than I wish it was, but anyway, but that's also it's gangster rap, right? It's part of what this is. It's not, Biggie doesn't have a monopoly on that. It's kind of the genre. So it's more of a criticism of the entire genre, but it is what it is. So so having said all that, definite thumbs up. You're right, John. It's a classic.
Yeah, that song Things Unchanged, Matt sampled some songs from The Main Ingredient, so okay. That's what you're looking for. I'm gonna mimic everything you guys are saying. He was famous for rapping off the top of his head too, and not writing lyrics down, so that makes it even more impressive. if he just thought of this stuff off the dome. The listening to all the rap that we've listened to up to this point really kind of made me appreciate like how talented he was listening to this album this time around. I think if you come into this album maybe not knowing kind of the history of rap, you might not appreciate like how talented he is as an artist. And I agree with you. I think he is kind of next level, especially like the more you listen. Obviously you have to pay attention to the lyrics in order to appreciate that, but like John said, the way he structures things and the way he kind of like marries like references but also like onomatopoeia, and like just the kind of way he lets things hang or drags out words sometimes too, and it all feels very natural, but he's also like a very aggressive rapper, and the topic is the topics, crime and sex and just living the life of a criminal and the gangster rap lifestyle, like that does put the dark tone on it. But I can still appreciate, hearing him rap and knowing that it's better than a lot of people out there. I agree too that the sampling is also great. I think that his rapping on top of that is key. I mean, that's really the two things that need to be on point in order to make a great rap album. And I think in terms of the content too, I think things are incrementally always like kind of pushing the envelope, because when we heard NWA back in the late 80s, I thought, wow, this is like violent and stuff, and then like I hear this and I'm like, wow, this is violent and stuff too. And I think I don't know if it's more violent, but it feels more aggressive or extreme in some way.
It's dark. It feels darker.
I think you're right. I think he's just his way with words too and describing things is I think he's better at that than a lot of people. So he's really painting the picture in a way too. The skits and stuff I can always do without, but I think they do add a layer of the milieu of this album. It adds to that. It also, like it said, it gets into his kind of maybe like depression or paranoia or things like that, and the dark thoughts, the suicidal thoughts that ends the album. That's a perfect like encapsulation of an example of that type of thought. The fact that he like talks about having suicidal thoughts and then kills himself at the end. You brought that up, Matt. I think too that there's a lot of, outside of the three big singles, I think there's a lot of really good songs on here. Gimme the Loot, Machine Gun Funk, Ready to Die. I like Method Man on the What. I thought that was like kind of a welcome. For the most part, it's just him. So when Method Man comes in, he's so recognizable, and the kind of dynamic between the two of them rapping, and the fact that I can't remember what song on it, but he brings up the Wu-Tang Clan later on. B.I.G. references Wu-Tang later on, or Method Man or something in another song. But that's just an example too. I wish I had written down more of the lyrics that I liked, but listening to it too is kind of like, me saying them is not as good as Biggie rapping them. So like, it's not going to do it justice, I guess is my point. But it's a bit long, but I think it's worth the journey, and it is definitely an elite rap album. So big thumbs up for me.
Well, two things in terms of exploring something that I just found out, guys. Did you know on that sketch that we mentioned, the comical one, that was Little Kim, who was the other person, which made me,
nope, but it's not surprising.
Yep. And the second interlude that you mentioned, Matt, was not Little Kim, but unfortunately, much like Axl Rose, it was real time. So we did,
oh my God,
unfortunately, excite. That makes it a lot grosser, doesn't it? Like
it sure. Thank you, John.
I was looking more for who was in that sketch. I was curious to see if it was one of like the rappers in the collective, and they mentioned, it was Little Kim. It was like a funny thing they did in the studio, but they did mention, but you wouldn't believe this. But I was like, so yeah,
that's definitely worse than the